What's going on, guys? If you showed up for the neurodivergent stream, I apologize, but as you guys know, I haven't been feeling well, and that's going to be a complicated stream, and I really want to be prepared for it. And I haven't been able to make those preparations due to illness. Also, today we discovered that it's likely that our main business is sunk because of Trump's tariffs. So I also am a little bit distracted, probably. But since I rescheduled last night and again today, I wanted to at least pop on and have a little chat about the socio-cultural climate in particularly the United States. But, you know, you really can't affect one system without affecting the larger system. So unfortunately, everything that happens in the United States affects us everywhere else. The tariffs, for example, are a great example of that. So this is a subject I actually get into pretty often on the channel. And the reason for that is that as a neurodivergent person and other cognitive idiosyncrasies, that I have, I wasn't really susceptible to indoctrination or, you know, following the herd. And not only that, I grew up really isolated. My parents were kind of insane. So we had no family that came over. They didn't have friends. I was very reclusive, you know, so I didn't have the television. I didn't have the internet. I didn't have people pressuring me to conform. I didn't have any kind of influences really at all. And I think that's why I'm able to see all these things for what it is, you know. I remember being in like third grade, I think, and my mom went to go vote. And I remember sitting in the car thinking, does she really think this is real? You know, that these world leaders are going to allow just random people to choose the person that is, you know, controls the fate of their fortunes. And it just seemed absurd to me, you know. And also I saw the fundamental values that should be the highest priority of humanity: ending famines, war, you know, unjust persecution, and you know what I mean, all that kind of stuff. These things were avoided when I heard these politicians speaking. You know, they focused on things that I recognized were relatively insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Like when you have problems this big, you don't need to be focused on abortion and, you know, whatever other stupid wedge issue. I mean, I'm not saying abortion is a totally stupid issue, but you guys get what I'm saying. The reality is that solutions also to a lot of these major problems that confront humanity are solvable algorithmically. There's no dispute. It's not a matter of opinion what political or socioeconomic system is going to serve people within certain contexts the best way, you know, and that does vary depending on this population and other factors. But it's you scale things, you make adjustments, the algorithm can be tweaked, you know. And then furthermore along those lines, we have proof of concept in countries where, you know, we have, I think, 7 out of 10 of the top countries by all 3 of these metrics. Happiness should be number 1, period. Like, what could be a more important metric than that? Education and healthcare. Right? The 3 most important metrics, 7 out of 10, basically the same system. So why aren't we implementing that in the US? Why aren't we even talking about it? It has worked, you know? And if you're one of those people that say that, you know, it's not free healthcare, your taxes still pay for it, you know? But if you're one of those people that say that these systems don't work, I know people that live in these countries. They come to visit me. They have way more money than I do. And they're totally happy to pay a high rate of taxes so there are no homeless people. There are no junkies. People aren't sick and dying that don't needlessly, you know? I mean, it really is the most tragic, pointless waste of human potential and resources imaginable. What's happening in the United States and in other countries to a lesser degree. People have been indoctrinated, intergeneration indoctrination, to the extent that they will fight each other against their own best interest. That's what's happening in the U.S. You know, and when you leave and you go and travel abroad, you really realize everyone on earth knows that the United States has become an insane asylum. Everybody but the U.S. citizens. Like, pretty much everyone views the U.S. population as like brainwashed lunatics. You know, and this situation with Charlie Kirk, I guess, was it yesterday? I don't even remember. Recently enough, I've been really sick, so my memory's a bit, you know, been in bed for a week, so everything kind of just blurs together. But 3 hours after Kirk was shot, 51 Republicans blocked the release of the Epstein files. 3 hours later, during all the fanfare, and Netanyahu and Trump posted at exactly 5:02 a.m. their condolences. Exactly the same second their two posts appeared on X. Netanyahu, Trump, exactly the same second. You know, you do not have a democracy in the United States. The writing is on the wall. Like, things have gotten so overt and blatant. I can't help but think the only hope we really have is that hubris is their downfall. You know, that it becomes so over the top ridiculous, they're so overconfident that they actually trigger a revolt. You know, when you think about all the coincidences, right? If this situation is actually used to pivot towards totalitarianism the rest of the way, turning point, right? Wasn't that Charlie's turning point? It's a turning point, right? The whole story is ridiculous. He said that it's worth a few, you know, to maintain the Second Amendment. I happen to agree. But the fact that the guy that said that got, you know, murked, Kirk got murked, and the last word that came out of his mouth was violence. The last word that came out of his mouth was violence. Right? And on the same day, somebody made $100 billion in an hour. $100 billion in an hour. Life on Mars has been announced. Alien life. It doesn't matter if it's bacteria, it's alien life. There was more. There was there was a school, you know, that thing, that day. I'm missing a bunch of stuff, but, like, you know, it was a pile of just complete madness in all different sectors, practically simultaneously. And this is kind of another thread, but that's going to continue, and it's going to continue to increase, at least until this solar activity calms back down. You know? But the point of that last rant was really that, you know, this is going to be used to push the gun control agenda. It serves to discourage potential agitators, right? What's his name? That Jewish pundit. Facts don't care about your feelings. That guy. I can't remember his name. I don't really care either. That guy, you know, little yarmulke and he canceled all of his upcoming events like immediately. You know, and he is hardly an anti-establishment provocateur or whatever. You know what I mean? He's one of their puppets, and he's scared. Even their puppets are scared. Right? So it's like somebody like me, in case you were, the message to somebody like me is, in case you were thinking about actually trying to rally people and doing anything, just remember, we shoot our own puppets, you know? They don't care. There is no fucking element of morality or ethics that comes into play with them. There's none at all. If it's a strategic advantage for their agenda, then they will do it. You know, being one of their servants does not protect you at all. Not at all. Look at JFK. You know, and that's actually part of the message they were sending. Don't you fucking step out of line. None of you. None of you. You know, shit, there was more to this even. Free speech is under attack again. It's wild watching Donald Trump talk about, like, you know, my heart is broken. He was such a good person. It's like, dude, you know exactly what happened and why. It's your fault. You did this, basically, you know. People need to realize that the main thing, the first thing people need to realize is that there aren't really two parties in the United States. There really isn't. That is completely an illusion. Totally and completely. You know, and I think the reality is if people don't like somehow unanimously just come to that realization and accept it, we're doomed. That's like the first thing that needs to happen. People need to really take a good hard look at like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the things that they have done in the past versus just the rhetoric that comes out of their mouth, and assess them based on not what they say but what they've done, and then compare. You know, or look at the trajectory, the political trajectory, regardless of red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, is heading towards totalitarianism. Rights vaporizing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything. If it did anything, they wouldn't let you vote. It's completely farcical. It's not a little bit farcical. It's not a little bit corrupt. It is completely and utterly corrupt. I mean, can you imagine still being a Trump supporter or even a Republican after 51 Republicans block the release of the Epstein file? 51 of them. You know, and then you look out there at these people and the shit that they say in response to this, like, well, why didn't the Democrats just, because it's all one party, stupid. Why aren't you asking why did neither party do it? That's the thing. You know, quit clinging to your life preserver, because I hate to tell you this, it's actually a shark. You think it's a life preserver, but it's not. It's your fucking doom you're clinging to. You know? And I really kind of am optimistic for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is that the reason they are escalating the fear and the psyops and the mitigation of civil rights and all of this kind of shit is that they know people are going to wake up and snap out of it. You know, it is becoming a flood. And the stream I was planning to do tonight about neurodivergence and high IQ and pattern recognition and all that kind of stuff, since I started to realize that that's what was going on with me and doing a lot of research and listening to people talking about this, it hit me that, yeah, there's a lot of people that it's like a trend, you know, and for some reason, girls in their teens to like early to mid 20s, like whenever there's a new mental health crisis type deal, they all suddenly have it. You know, not really sure what that's about, but it was true when I was in high school and it's apparently still true today. But there are a lot of people that legitimately are under the heading of neurodivergence, and those people see through everything. They're not programmable, you know. We're not social politesse type masking and whatnot. Like some of us can do it, I guess. But we see through everything. We see people for who they really are, no matter what act they put on. We see through the political bullshit. We see through the, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not even sure that this label it may be an umbrella term that's kind of used a little bit too judiciously, I guess is what I'm saying. I think that there may be other ways to think about it that are frightening to the status quo. And like speaking of propaganda, for example, RFK Jr., a lot of people see this guy speaking out against, big pharma and all the other shit he says. And a lot of it I agree with, sure. But it's a trick. It's definitely a trick. And the reason I brought him up, just so to make it clear, is that he has been on like an anti-autistic people campaign. I mean, even they've said things that sound a lot like rounding them up and like putting them in camps and, they can't be in society. That's true. We'll tear it the fuck down because we see through all the bullshit and we know the potential of what is possible, and we're tired of it. We're starting to also realize we've been like mocked and ridiculed and shit our whole lives, and we were right. We do have precognitions, and we do see through the politics and the institutionalized bias and everything. We weren't wrong, These fucking muggles have been ostracizing us, and you know what I mean? Like, that's over because we figured it out, that there's a shit ton of us, and we were right. So anyways, RFK Jr., his job is to make the things he represents look even stupider and crazier by association, right? If you look at this guy's mental health history, like he did something with a deer carcass on a golf course or something. Like he had a heroin habit for a long time. He did all kinds of stuff with prostitutes while he was married. His first wife unalived herself. Like he had a brain worm. You know what I mean? If you really think they put that guy in there to help that cause, you're out of your fucking mind. He is there for the same purpose that they created Flat Earth. To make that whole movement just look like a bunch of raving fucking lunatics. That's what RFK Jr. is there for. If they didn't want to, if that wasn't the objective there, they would have somebody that could speak clearly and didn't have a history of using deer carcasses to freak out tourists. And you know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. Completely fucking insane. But the main thing I brought that up for is about the neurodivergence. If you're not suspicious of him after that, I don't, you know what I mean? You're definitely not one of us. That's a fact. Oh shit. No way. I just realized I had this unlisted the whole time I looked. I was like, man, 0 people. How is that? Oh, well, you guys can watch it on the replay. That's a bummer, though, because I'm pretty sure it won't send it out in the algorithm if it has 0 minutes view time. Oops. I can't believe I did that. I've been talking for 18 minutes to no one. Nice. All right, we got a person. I don't know if you heard that, but I guess I was streaming unlisted for the first 20 minutes. Oh, yeah, you said ha, ha, ha. Man, that sucks. Because it was important stuff, I guess I'll back up a little bit since you just popped in. I know you were there for the neurodivergent stream, and I apologize for not showing up for that, but I just haven't been feeling well, and I haven't been able to properly prepare for it. And I really want to do a good job at that. I'll talk a little bit about it, though, since it's just the two of us, I guess. And I won't spoil it. It can function as a teaser. But basically what happened is that I've had a lot of conflicts due to like trauma as a child. You know what I mean? A lot of self-doubt and self-esteem issues and whatnot. And they're a lot better now than they were when I was younger. But there's one major thing that had kind of been lingering, and it had to do with intelligence. My mom having narcissistic personality disorder, her main thing was to kind of undermine my self-confidence, right? So I had serious complexes around that, like really, really bad. And despite having taken numerous IQ tests and, all sorts of other evidence, I still had this voice in my head that's like, no, you're just, you're an idiot, trust me. There's, and the other day, I realized that I was in the GATE program and that they may have had some kind of criteria to, qualify. And I looked it up, and the one criteria was an IQ over 140. And so it hit me that not only, was I not stupid, which, I knew, but I had those complexes in the way. I realized that my mother had known that since I was in like second or third grade when I was tested. And she never told me, and, would actually like ridicule me along those lines and stuff, So that was wild. And then I started doing more research into how it all actually works with neurodivergence. And like the morning that I figured all this out, I went and told my partner, like, I think I can finally explain what it's like. Instead of getting a bit of information and having linear processing, it's like a bunch of rocks hitting a windshield all at once. And so everything connected to this thing, historical, philosophical, metaphysical, mathematical, any kind of, it's like a data network rather than a single thought. And then all the emotions and psychological triggers and everything else that are connected to any of those things also processes, and it all happens in a split second, right? So it's exhausting to be alive in that kind of modality, You don't really get used to it exactly. This is why autistic people will freak out in grocery stores and stuff, because there is this parallel processing going on that, it's just triggers everything. And so I kept doing research into it, and basically one of the assessments was that, with the NPD damage from my childhood trauma, that causes enhanced pattern recognition. Plus the being on the spectrum, my grandfather is like almost Rain Man level autistic. My partner's probably on the spectrum. Our guest right now is definitely on the spectrum. A lot of my clients are, I was wondering, what the hell, why am I always surrounded by people that are on the spectrum? Like all my friends, all my clients, like what the hell? Oh yeah, because where was I going with this? Okay, so one of the assessments basically told me that a way to think about it is that a 100 IQ brain that is neurotypical thinks in like a 2D like schematic, whereas my brain is like a holographic fractal when it processes information. And that it processes up to 20 layers of information for every one that a neurotypical with a 100 IQ would. And then when you add the pattern recognition into that, there's a whole nother scale of just fucking craziness. So that's not what this stream is about, though. I just wanted to kind of touch on it because I had it scheduled, and I know some of you guys that showed up to this one and showed up to that one. I'm not in shape to really get into it tonight. I need to be firing on all cylinders. I am feeling a lot better, and thank you, those of you that have supported Tyro. Really appreciate you. It's definitely been rough to have all these medical problems all back to back to back to back to back, and it's, this one was related to the surgery, and so it's actually been affecting me for months. And I just realized that after I took the medication and started to get a lot better, so that's crazy. But yeah, anyways, I am feeling a lot better, although still not 100%. And I'm really looking forward to that because I haven't been able to really be present in my work and whatnot for 6 weeks or something, And it's really been bugging me. I had the feeling I might not ever get back to normal, which was really distressing. So thank you guys for the support, those of you that have supported us. And if you haven't supported us, it'd be awesome if you did. Yeah, it's going to be a good video, the neurotypical thing. I mean, I kind of hate it because it's like, hi, I'm a retarded genius. My name is Harley, and I'm a retarded genius. You know, it's a weird thing. And a lot of it is definitely going to sound like superiority complex because I have a lot to say about neurotypical people. And the thing is, like, they have not been too kind to us. They have not been very kind to humanity. They're not really very kind to themselves. And it is difficult not to be bitter when you have been, like, you know, told that you're just uneducated or stupid or whatever, you know, all these ideas that I've had my whole life. And they all have turned out to be correct. And I've been, like, mocked by people with, you know, according to one of the analysis, basically, there's twice as much distance between my IQ and the average IQ as there is between the average IQ and a severely mentally disabled person. So, you know, just imagine, put yourself in my shoes and imagine, like, telling people stuff and they're like, dude, you're stupid. Like, you know, that's been my life since since I can remember. And I'm not going to say that I don't have some bitterness about that. I do have plenty of it. Plenty. I feed into it too. I know I have bad teeth, long hair. You know, I don't dress in a suit or whatever, so people make assumptions based on appearance. And I guess I don't really blame them for that. You know, another crazy thing about being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world is that people project neurotypical behaviors onto you that they just don't apply. So you're constantly getting judged for being what other people are, the things that you can't stand, you know, like, and that people can't even process that, you know, you have just a natural sense of justice, for example. You know, like, people are suspicious of your motives because they don't understand doing something without self-interest. You know what I mean? Just because it makes sense. That's not how neurotypicals work, apparently. You know? So you get a lot of shit, man, for having this kind of neurological idiosyncrasy. It's pretty stupid, really, too, at the end of the day. But the subject tonight is supposed to be politics and psyops, you know, and like I said earlier, I probably won't stream that much longer because I'm not feeling really strong exactly. But knowing that the ratchet is being cranked on with the whole New World Order agenda is alarming to me, you know, and I don't see a resistance movement coagulating with the kind of speed and concision that is necessary, you know. And the reality is that we are in a tremendously extraordinary position to understand ourselves and the universe on a level that has never been available to humanity in the past, unless we've been lied about history or whatever. But you know what I mean? You got to compartmentalize in order to have a conversation, you know, as far as we know. Like, the potential is absolutely beyond words. You know, it really is. It's beyond articulation. And we just have, like, literally some spoiled, psychopathic, you know, pedo, empty, vapid, fucking pieces of shit, but standing between us and that reality. You know, there's just a little handful of people whose psychological aberrations have converged to create a disposition that is absolutely, unequivocally evil incarnate. And it's really the worst kind of evil because there's no point in it. There's absolutely no point. The people that are responsible for all of this suppression and death and destruction, they could step aside and never make another penny and not blow anything up and not run any psyops, and, you know, and they would be rich for generations still. They're not even doing these things for their own benefit at this point. Like, when does money stop being meaningful? You know, to me, I think it's about like $4 million or something. Like, whenever you can live the rest of your life and decide what to do with every moment and have something to leave for your children, you have more than enough money. You can stop there, you know? Anybody that argues that anything else is necessary is just brainwashed, or, you know, there's something wrong with their mind. You know, like, and if you challenge them to like give you like a, you know, logical basis for like why there should be billionaires, there's just either complete drivel or just a scoff comes out of their mouth. You know, they're doing all of this at this point for no reason, for nothing. They already have more money than they could spend. They have all the power. You know, it's almost like it's just being done out of malice or out of hatred for truth. You know, it's almost enough to make you believe in the devil because it's so senseless. And also because they have definitely, deliberately suppressed truth. You know, our sovereign right as sovereign beings to understand what we are, where we came from, and where we're going. You know, this is something that has actually been understood for thousands of years. And it has been deliberately suppressed, you know, in Rome, in Babylonia, in Egypt, and still to this day. All the gateways to this knowledge are labeled occult and evil, demonized, you know. And there are records of the overlords themselves, all the way back to Pharaoh, talking about it, writing about it. How this true spiritual knowledge imparts an awareness of their sovereignty and gives people the ability to carry it responsibly, to wield that power. And they can't have that. That's why they created a monotheistic religion in Egypt. It's why they created Christianity in Rome. It's what these things are for. It's how they've been used. You know, and it really looks to me like there is a generation of, or at least a good chunk of a generation or two, of neurodivergents that have emerged that are immune to their bullshit. And really, I think that it's not for the causes that people think. You know, when it's too much, maybe, when people are a little bit too far on the spectrum, it definitely gets to be not helpful. But I think it's an evolutionary adaptation. And it's not just about freeing us, it's about surviving. You know, if we let these people remain zombified and sleepwalking, they're going to extinct themselves. You know, they really are. Like, they know it's coming, and they still don't change their behavior enough to accommodate, you know, to mitigate their extinction. You know, and really it's cowardice beyond just not wanting to change the behavior, because everybody realizes, I think, at this point, that recycling or whatever is not going to do it. The only way to fix this is to pull the problem out by its roots. But people are just afraid. They're comfortable. They don't want to get hurt. I don't really blame them for that, you know. But the reality is that if we keep sleepwalking and just acting like, you know, that these little meaningless gestures like voting and recycling are going to stop this monster, we're done for. We're toast. You know, sorry guys, but you're liberal pussyfooting around trying to fix, you know, the fucking Satan, you know, to tame the devil or whatever. It's not going to cut it. It's not going to fucking cut it. It's going to take more than you. Better call your backup team and wait for your crew. Yeah, guys. So I think I've said my piece. Hey, did my camera freeze? Oh, no, my head froze. I was so still. But I'm increasingly feeling ill again, so I'm going to go. But I hope that you take some kind of inspiration from that. You know, I mean, I don't say this maybe enough, but like the reason that they're putting all this pressure all of a sudden is because they know that there's an awakening happening. It really is. The number one enemy of the state has always been philosophical truth, according to 33rd degree Freemason Albert Pike. Right? He wrote that in Morals and Dogma. He also wrote that Rome feared free thought more than vice or crime. Right? This is not new. They have been studying how to manage these populations and manipulate their psychology and all of this shit for thousands of years in these bloodlines and passing it down, the skills and the knowledge and shit, and compressing it in intelligence agencies and think tanks and shit, you know? Like, people need to just stop being so goddamn naive and realize, like, this isn't conspiracy theory. This isn't conjecture. There's historical records of all this. And if you're not so much of a coward that you can't, like, just look at it, it's really, really obvious, you know? But I think that people basically do have a feeling of obligation to decency, you know, the majority of them. And if they did become suddenly aware of it, they would feel compelled to do something, and that's why they refuse to become aware of it, you know? So hopefully, if we can apply the right kind and degree of force through the proper medium to the proper object, we will get the result of, you know, waking people up and liberating humanity from this dumb fuckery. It is such a waste of potential, and I'm so sick of it. Good night, guys. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron, or you can support us via the options in the chat.